Welcome to Thought Provoked. This is the space where we really dive into ideas that challenge and hopefully inspire. I'm Claire.
And I'm Max. It's great to be here exploring concepts that, really shape how we live.
Imagine for a moment that everything you perceive as a struggle in your life, every nagging fear, every whisper of self-doubt, those parts of yourself you instinctively shy away from acknowledging. What if they weren't just obstacles to power through? What if they were something far more profound?
Interesting. Like, what if they were less like roadblocks and more like, breadcrumbs, a subtle map, perhaps, guiding you towards a deeper understanding of yourself and maybe ultimately towards a life more aligned with your true potential and purpose.
Exactly. We're often conditioned to view our perceived flaws or weaknesses as, problems to be eliminated, right? Things to hide or fix. But what if the key to unlocking your greatest strengths and living a truly fulfilling life lies precisely in embracing those uncomfortable, hidden aspects?
Yeah, that's a really powerful idea. It kind of challenges much of conventional self-help, doesn't it? Which often focuses only on accentuating the positive. Jungian psychology, though, suggests something different. That wholeness comes from integrating all of who you are, the good, the bad, the messy.
And that's why today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most potentially transformative concepts from the world of depth psychology, Carl Jung's theory of the shadow. Our mission here really is to move beyond just the abstract definition and truly uncover the practical, profound truths embedded within this idea. Truths that, when you understand them, when you engage with them, hold immense power to reshape your life. They can reveal sources of purpose and freedom you might never have imagined.
Absolutely. And this isn't just some academic exercise, is it? It's really an invitation to look inward with courage. Because understanding this often feared part of yourself isn't about dwelling in darkness. It's much more about reclaiming vital energy and insight. Insight that's essential for becoming whole and finding your unique contribution to the world.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning then. To even get into this journey, we need a clear understanding. What exactly did Carl Jung mean when he talked about the shadow?
Okay, well, Carl Jung, a contemporary of Freud and a real giant in depth psychology, he described the shadow as the unconscious part of ourselves, the part that we reject or disown or repress. Think of it like a psychological cellar, maybe, a hidden repository for all the traits, impulses, desires, aspects of our personality that we, for whatever reason, maybe because they were deemed unacceptable by our family or society, or even just our own developing ego, we push them out of conscious awareness, into the dark, so to speak.
So it's not necessarily inherently evil then, just the stuff we don't like or maybe we're told we shouldn't like about ourselves.
Precisely. That's a really important distinction. It's anything that falls outside the narrow definition of the persona, the mask we construct and present to the world. It could be traits like anger, jealousy, selfishness, greed, sure. But it could also be potentially positive traits, things like power or assertiveness, creativity, even vulnerability maybe, if those were somehow discouraged or shamed when we were younger. The key is that it's unconscious and disowned. We don't consciously identify with it.
And here's the incredible paradox Jung identified, isn't it? This hidden, rejected part paradoxically contains not only what we deem negative, but also the very seeds of our greatest strengths. And he believed it holds a crucial blueprint for living a more authentic and fulfilling life.
That's the counterintuitive heart of the concept, absolutely. We hide these parts because we fear their weaknesses or maybe shameful. Yet the very energy contained within them, when brought into conscious awareness and integrated, can become this tremendous source of vitality, creativity, and strength. The raw material of what we reject is often also the raw material of our unique genius in a way.
Okay, wow. This is where it starts to feel really personal, I think. How does this hidden shadow actually show up in our lives? If it's unconscious, how do we even know it's there?
Well, initially, it often shows up through avoidance and discomfort, kind of like you touched on earlier. We find ourselves instinctively recoiling from certain thoughts or feelings about ourselves. We might consciously try to be the opposite of a perceived shadow trait. So perhaps becoming excessively meek if we've suppressed anger, or maybe overly self-effacing if we've suppressed a desire for recognition, that kind of thing.
So that intense discomfort, like when a certain topic or feeling comes up internally, that's a signpost, a clue.
Absolutely. It's like an internal alarm bell ringing. And this internal avoidance almost always spills over into our interactions with the external world. One of the most common ways the shadow manifests is through projection.
Ah, yes, projection, seeing your own stuff reflected back at you.
Exactly that.
Ooh.
Jung argued that when we vigorously deny or reject a part of ourselves, our unconscious finds another way to deal with it. It projects it onto others. We then see and react intensely to those very traits in people around us, often without recognizing that what bothers us so much is something we actually carry ourselves.
So, okay, let's say if someone's arrogance drives you absolutely mad. It might not just be about their behavior. It could be about a part of your shadow that you're suppressing, maybe a fear of being arrogant yourself, or even a suppressed desire for confidence or recognition.
Precisely. The intensity of the reaction is often the key indicator. A mild dislike might just be a personality clash. That
Yeah.
happens. But if someone's behavior triggers a really disproportionate emotional response, intense anger, disgust, envy, or even, interestingly, excessive uncritical admiration, that's a strong signal. It suggests your shadow might be involved. They are, in that moment, holding up an unwanted mirror to something within you.
And Jung captured this perfectly, didn't he, with his famous quote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves."
That quote is just. It's a cornerstone of shadow work. It completely reframes conflict. It turns that external irritation into an internal opportunity for insight. Instead of focusing solely on criticizing or trying to change the other person, it prompts that crucial question. Why is this affecting me so strongly?
Mm-hmm.
What does this reaction reveal about a part of myself that I'm not fully accepting or acknowledging?
It seems like a difficult truth to face, though. It's much easier to just blame the other person, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It is. Deflection and blame are very common defenses against encountering the shadow. It's uncomfortable territory. But the power the shadow holds over us stems directly from its unconscious nature. The more energy we expend trying to deny, suppress, or push away an aspect of ourselves, the more power that hidden part gains. It ends up operating outside of our conscious control, often in ways we don't understand.
That's a bit frightening, actually. The more you fight it, the stronger it gets, but it's operating in the dark.
That's the paradox, yes. Think of the analogy, like trying to hold a large, inflated beach ball underwater. It requires immense effort and energy to keep it submerged, right? The pressure builds. And inevitably, whether through sheer exhaustion or just a moment's loss of focus, it will eventually burst to the surface, often with unexpected force.
And that sudden surfacing, that might manifest as a disproportionate emotional outburst,
Right.
or an unexplained mood swing, maybe self-sabotaging behavior, or even just a really strong reactive projection onto someone else.
Exactly. All that suppressed energy has to go somewhere. It finds an outlet. And the cost isn't just these disruptive outbursts. It's the sheer amount of psychological energy tied up in keeping that beach ball submerged in the first place. It's draining.
Wow. Okay, so just consider this for a moment, you listening right now. How much energy do you think you're spending keeping certain thoughts, feelings, or desires about yourself hidden? Maybe from others? Or maybe even from yourself? Is it a fear of not being good enough? Is it a deep-seated anger about past hurts you haven't dealt with? Persistent envy of someone else's success, perhaps? Or maybe a powerful creative urge you've dismissed as impractical or silly? A longing for connection you've buried under layers of self-sufficiency.
Yeah, think about those parts of yourself you tend to keep in the dark. What if they weren't actually flaws to be eradicated? What if they were more like messages from your deeper self, messages about unmet needs, perhaps, or suppressed potential, or unresolved pain, all just waiting to be understood and integrated?
And if the shadow holds such immense, albeit hidden, potential, if these uncomfortable parts are actually messengers, then the critical next question has to be, how do we move from simply recognizing the shadow, maybe through those uncomfortable triggers and projections, to actually accessing its power and bringing it into the light in a constructive way? How do we do that?
Right. That movement, that process, is the core of what Jung termed individualization. It's essentially the lifelong process of integrating the unconscious aspects of the psyche, including the shadow, into our conscious awareness. The journey of becoming whole, really, of discovering and embodying your complete authentic self, not just the polished persona you show the world, but the full spectrum of your being, light and shadow combined.
And the source material, well, our understanding of Jung makes it abundantly clear this isn't exactly a comfortable or easy road.
Oh, far from it. It requires immense courage, unflinching honesty, and a real willingness to sit with discomfort. Looking squarely at the parts of yourself you've deemed shameful or unacceptable, that's challenging work. There's no way around that. But as Jung and countless others who've undertaken this journey attest, the rewards are truly immeasurable. The process of individualization is precisely where our greatest growth occurs. It's not achieved by ignoring the shadow, but by embracing it.
This whole idea of integrating the darker parts of ourselves, it's something we see echoed in myths and stories throughout history, isn't it? I think you mentioned mythological examples before.
Absolutely, it's a classic theme. Think of the hero's journeys in mythology. Heroes like Hercules, for instance. He wasn't just renowned for his physical strength. He also had to grapple with these bouts of destructive rage, his own capacity for error, his shadow side. Or figures in more modern mythologies like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. He has to confront the possibility of darkness within himself, right? The temptation of the dark side before he can fully embrace his path as a Jedi. These narratives aren't just external adventures. They are potent psychological metaphors for our own inner task. The task of confronting and integrating our shadow aspects. The shadow isn't some external enemy to be defeated. It's a part of the self to be understood and integrated.
Okay, so if the shadow isn't an enemy to be vanquished, how do we relate to it? Is it like a guide?
Jung saw it very much as a guide, yes, albeit a challenging one sometimes. Your shadow communicates with you constantly, though often indirectly. It whispers through recurring dreams, maybe those persistent, inexplicable fears that seem to limit you, those strong pulls or aversions towards certain people or activities. And yes, very prominently through those intense emotional triggers in your relationships we talked about. These aren't just random occurrences. They are often the unconscious trying to get your attention, trying to surface aspects of your shadow for acknowledgement and, ultimately, integration.
So the starting point is awareness then, paying attention to these signs, the dreams, the fears, the triggers. Once we identify a potential shadow aspect, what's the next step? What do we do?
Right, following awareness, the absolutely crucial next step is acceptance. And I want to be really clear about what acceptance means in this context. It doesn't mean endorsing negative behavior or acting out every destructive impulse you might find lurking in your shadow. That's not it at all. It means acknowledging that this trait, this feeling, this desire exists within you without immediate judgment or condemnation. It's about understanding its presence, maybe its origins, rather than trying to pretend it's not there or push it away again.
That distinction feels really key. Acceptance isn't endorsement, it's acknowledgement, seeing it clearly.
Exactly. It's looking at that anger or that jealousy or that fear and saying, okay, this is a part of me right now. It's here. What is it trying to tell me? But just imagine the liberation of no longer fearing those parts of yourself you've maybe labeled flaws. Imagine the sheer energy freed up when you stop fighting against yourself internally.
That sounds incredibly powerful. Living with that level of authenticity and confidence, built on accepting the whole self, it seems like a completely different way of being in the world.
It fundamentally changes your relationship with yourself and consequently with the world around you. And thankfully, Jungian psychology and the whole tradition really provides some practical ways to actually do this work, to identify and integrate these parts.
Okay, let's get practical then. Where do we start? What are some tools?
Okay, the first crucial step, and arguably the most challenging one, is what you could call radical self-honesty. This involves looking inward without filters, without making excuses, and just admitting to yourself the difficult truths about your motivations, feelings, and fears. It takes significant courage to say, even just to yourself, yes, I feel this intense jealousy, or yes, I was motivated by a desire for control in that situation, or yes, I am deeply afraid of being seen as incompetent.
So it's about dropping the facade, even just for yourself, taking an honest look.
Precisely. And importantly, it's not about self-criticism or beating yourself up. That's counterproductive. It's simply about acknowledging the reality of your inner landscape. Think of it like cleaning a really heavily cluttered room. You can't organize it, make it functional, or even decide what to keep or discard until you first turn on the lights and honestly see the full extent of the mess, right? You can't integrate your shadow until you're willing to see it without immediately flinching away.
Okay, radical self-honesty, admitting what's really there. Got it. What's another practical tool?
Well, we touched on this earlier, but really consciously using emotional triggers as fuel for self-discovery is incredibly potent. So when you experience a strong, maybe disproportionate emotional reaction, whether it's anger, fear, shame, or even that excessive fawning or admiration pause, if you can, just for a moment, before you simply react outwardly or get completely swept away by the feeling, create a little space.
And what do you do in that pause? What happens then?
You ask yourself questions, gently, curiously. Why is this affecting me so strongly? What specific aspect of this situation or this person's behavior is pressing a button within me? What fear or insecurity or unmet need might this trigger be pointing to? Am I projecting something onto this person that I haven't accepted in myself? For instance, if you find someone else's success triggers intense envy, that pause might reveal it's not just a general dislike of that person, but maybe a suppressed desire for success in that same area yourself, or perhaps a deep-seated belief that you're not capable of achieving it. The envy in this case isn't the problem itself, it's the pointer. It's the signpost pointing towards the unacknowledged desire or the limiting belief hiding in your shadow.
So each trigger becomes a doorway if you're brave enough to step through it and look inward instead of just reacting outward.
Exactly. It requires shifting from that automatic reactive stance, they're the problem, they need to change, to a more curious introspective stance. Why am I reacting this way? What's this about for me? Each trigger really is a potential opportunity to reclaim a piece of your disowned self.
Our understanding also points to something that might sound a bit esoteric initially, but which Jung really emphasized: dialogue with the shadow, talking to it.
Yes, this is a really powerful technique for externalizing and engaging with these hidden parts.
Yeah.
Because the shadow is unconscious, we can't simply think our way into understanding it logically all the time. So Jung encouraged people to imagine the shadow as a sort of separate entity, almost like another character, and engage in a dialogue with it.
How would someone actually do that? It sounds a bit strange, maybe.
Well, there's several ways. One common method is through journaling. You could literally write from the perspective of your conscious self, asking questions of your shadow, and then switch perspectives and write a response as the shadow. What would it say back? Or you could use visualization, maybe meditation, or even techniques like the empty chair method, where you literally imagine the shadow sitting in a chair opposite you, and you speak to it out loud.
Okay. What kind of questions would you ask this imagined entity, this shadow part?
You might ask things like, why do you behave this way? What are you afraid of? What are you trying to protect me from? Because often shadow aspects have a protective function, even if distorted.
Right.
Or, what do you need? What message are you trying so hard to get through to me? The goal isn't really to psychoanalyze yourself in an abstract way, but more to create a safe space for this disowned part to feel heard and seen, maybe for the first time.
And what can come from this dialogue? What might the shadow actually reveal through this process?
The insights can be incredibly profound and often quite surprising. That relentless internal critic, for instance, that voice of fear, it might reveal that it's actually a distorted protector. Maybe it's trying desperately to keep you safe by preventing you from taking risks it perceives as dangerous. Or suppressed anger might be a signpost pointing clearly to violated boundaries. Or maybe a deep sense of injustice you witnessed or experienced long ago. A buried desire for attention might be connected to a genuine need to share a unique gift or perspective with the world, something you've been too afraid to do. By giving the shadow a voice, you move from being controlled by it unconsciously to understanding its motivations and, crucially, reclaiming its energy consciously.
This connects really naturally to another Jungian tool you mentioned, the power of journaling and paying attention to dreams.
Absolutely. Jung himself dedicated countless hours to journaling, meticulously documenting his inner world in what he called his Red Book, using both writing and imagery. And he viewed dreams as a direct, unfiltered line of communication from the unconscious psyche. Dreams often present shadow material symbolically, through characters or scenarios or feelings that reflect our disowned aspects or unresolved inner conflicts.
So paying attention to dreams isn't just like interesting psychological trivia. It's a real way to listen to the shadow.
Precisely. Recording your dreams, even just fragments you remember, is the first step. Then reflect on them. Look for recurring themes, strong emotions, or prominent symbols. Ask yourself what they might represent, not literally, but symbolically, in the context of your waking life and your inner struggles. You know, a recurring dream of being unable to speak might point to a suppressed voice or truth hiding in your shadow. A dream about being pursued could relate to an aspect of yourself you're desperately trying to outrun or deny. These are messages waiting to be decoded and integrated into your conscious understanding.
Okay, so using these tools, the radical self-honesty, analyzing triggers, dialoguing with the shadow, journaling, exploring dreams, helps us identify and start accepting the shadow. How does this process specifically connect to finding your purpose? Because that's a key promise here, isn't it?
Yes, this is where the true magic happens, I think. Often, the very traits, desires, or potentials that end up relegated to our shadow are actually closely tied to our unique gifts and our most authentic path in life. We suppress them out of fear or shame, or maybe a belief that they're unacceptable or impractical. And in doing so, we inadvertently bury the very things that could lead us to our most fulfilling purpose.
Wow. So that creative spark I dismissed as frivolous years ago, or that desire for leadership I secretly felt but feared was arrogant, or that intensity I was told was too much, those could actually be keys.
Exactly. The energy and the passion behind those suppressed aspects don't just disappear. They're still there, often causing trouble unconsciously. When you bring them into conscious awareness and integrate them, you reclaim that vital energy. That energy, which was previously being used just to keep the shadow submerged, can now be channeled constructively.
Yeah.
I think we touched on this. Someone who suppressed their creativity out of fear might find, years later, that embracing this once feared part leads directly to their life's work as an artist or innovator. The fear was part of the shadow, absolutely, but the creativity was also there, just waiting to be reclaimed.
And Jung believed purpose isn't something you just passively find out there, but something you actively uncover within yourself by aligning with your full, authentic self, shadow included.
Yes, exactly. Your purpose emerges from the convergence of your conscious values and your integrated unconscious, which absolutely includes the shadow. It's about becoming who you truly are. As Jung famously said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And becoming who you truly are means embracing all the parts, not just the easy or socially acceptable ones. It means integrating the shadow.
So, to help the listener connect their own shadow work to purpose, maybe right now, what self-inquiry questions could they ask themselves?
Okay, yeah. Building on the tools we discussed, you could ask yourself things like, what aspects of myself have I consistently hidden from others, or maybe even tried to hide from myself? What qualities or behaviors in other people trigger really intense negative reactions in me? Remember projection. What passions, dreams, or desires did I abandon years ago because they felt too risky, too vulnerable, or fundamentally unacceptable somehow? What was I told was wrong about me when I was growing up? Maybe write down the answers to these questions. Just brainstorm. And then reflect on them without immediate judgment. Ask, what might my shadow be trying to tell me about my suppressed potential, my unmet needs, or my true buried desires? Giving voice to these aspects, even just on paper initially, can reveal those breadcrumbs, those clues, leading you toward a more authentic path and purpose.
It's a really powerful process of self-discovery, isn't it? Reframing perceived weaknesses as potential sources of strength and direction. And what are the broader implications of this integration? Beyond finding personal purpose, how does this work impact our relationships, maybe even the world around us?
Oh, the transformative impact extends far beyond just the individual. Think again of that artist analogy we used earlier. An artist who only uses light colors can create something pleasant, sure, but it might lack depth, lack contrast. Using the full spectrum, including the darks, allows for complexity, richness, a far more compelling masterpiece. Integrating your shadow is like gaining access to that full spectrum of the human experience within yourself. It means understanding and accepting that these darker aspects are part of the human condition. Importantly, it doesn't mean acting destructively based on them, but understanding them.
And this acceptance of your own complexities, your own shadow, naturally fosters compassion, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's almost inevitable. When you courageously look at the parts of yourself that you've judged harshly, your fears, your insecurities, your capacity for anger or envy, you start to realize that others likely carry similar struggles. This shared human experience creates a foundation for profound compassion, both for yourself, which is crucial, and for everyone else. You start to see others' difficult behaviors or struggles not just as character flaws, but maybe as expressions of their own wrestling match with their shadow.
And how does this specifically impact relationships? You mentioned earlier that unresolved shadow aspects are often sources of conflict.
They absolutely are. Relationships are often the primary stage, the main arena, where our unconscious shadow plays out most dramatically. Unresolved shadow material manifests as those recurring patterns of tension, conflict, or just plain misunderstanding in our interactions. Have you ever felt trapped in the same argument loop with a partner? Or repeatedly attracted similar kinds of challenging relationship dynamics? These are often driven by unconscious shadow material being projected or triggered.
So relationships act like mirrors, constantly reflecting back our unacknowledged parts.
Precisely. The people closest to us, and sometimes even strangers who just push our buttons in a particular way, can embody or act out traits that resonate deeply with our own disowned shadow. So if you haven't accepted your own need for control, for example, you might constantly clash with people you perceive as controlling. Or if you've suppressed your vulnerability, maybe finding it weak, you might find yourself really irritated by people who express their emotions openly and freely.
So by doing the internal shadow work, the dynamic in the relationship can actually shift, even if the other person doesn't consciously change anything.
Fundamentally, yes. By becoming aware of how your own shadow is participating in the dynamic, you gain the power to interrupt the old automatic patterns. Instead of automatically blaming the other person, it's all their fault, you can pause and ask, okay, what is this conflict teaching me about myself? What part of my shadow is being activated right now? Now, this doesn't mean excusing genuinely bad behavior from others, of course not, but it allows you to respond with more awareness, more compassion, and much less reactivity. It transforms potential conflict from just a painful experience into an opportunity for mutual understanding or, at the very least, individual growth.
And how does this relate back to enhancing creativity and purpose, which we touched on?
Well, as we said, the shadow is this vast reservoir of untapped potential and raw energy. Think about how much energy we expend keeping our shadow hidden. The vigilance, the defensiveness, the constant performance of a false self. It's exhausting. When we begin the work of integration, much of that energy can be reclaimed. This freed up energy, combined with the insights gained from understanding our deeper selves, can be channeled directly into creative expression and purposeful action in the world.
So that suppressed anger could genuinely fuel powerful advocacy for justice. That hidden sensitivity could power deeply empathetic art. That buried desire for power could become effective, ethical leadership.
Exactly right. The raw material of the shadow becomes the fuel for creation and contribution. Many of history's most impactful artists, writers, and leaders have directly engaged with their own shadow material in their work. You can see it. Think of Frida Kahlo's unflinching depictions of her physical and emotional pain, her identity struggles, or the raw intensity in the work of artists who explore themes of alienation or rebellion. Even someone like Martin Luther King Jr., he didn't suppress the righteous anger he felt at injustice. He acknowledged it and channeled it into a powerful, disciplined force for social change. Jung actually viewed creativity itself as a powerful pathway to individualization, a way for the unconscious, including the shadow, to express itself and ultimately be integrated.
So, listener, think about those creative impulses again. Those projects, those seemingly impractical dreams you've maybe put aside or dismissed. What if they are expressions of your true self, just waiting to emerge? What if they could draw energy from the very parts of you you've kept hidden or felt ashamed of?
As you consciously engage with this process, this integration of your shadow, you will likely begin to experience a profound shift internally. The traits and feelings that once felt overwhelming or shameful or problematic, they don't just disappear, but their energy can be transmuted. They can become sources of strength, wisdom, compassion, and creativity. This leads to living with increased authenticity, a deeper sense of confidence that isn't dependent on external validation, and a clearer, more robust sense of purpose. It is a lifelong journey, definitely. It demands ongoing patience and courage. But the trajectory is undeniably towards greater wholeness.
And perhaps the most profound insight of all, which you hinted at earlier, is that this process isn't just about individual transformation, it's bigger than that. Integrating the shadow has the potential to impact humanity as a whole, doesn't it?
This is the wider lens through which Jung viewed this work. Absolutely. Why? Because when you have the courage to face your own darkness, to acknowledge your own capacity for anger, judgment, fear, selfishness, whatever it may be, you naturally become more compassionate and empathetic towards others. It just happens. You recognize that the struggles you find within yourself are not unique. They are part of the shared human experience. We all carry a shadow.
It's about recognizing that everyone is, in some way, wrestling with their own shadow, just like you are.
Precisely. And just imagine a world where more people were consciously engaged in this kind of inner work. When individuals integrate their shadow, they are far less likely to project their unacknowledged fears and hostilities onto other groups, other cultures, other individuals. So much of the conflict and misunderstanding in the world, arguably, stems from collective shadow projection, seeing what we deny in ourselves amplified and demonized in the other.
So by doing the hard, sometimes uncomfortable work within ourselves, we actually contribute to a more conscious, less reactive, less divisive world.
That is the ultimate potential, yes. That's the ripple effect of widespread shadow work. By integrating our own darkness, we become more understanding, more tolerant, more capable of connecting with others from a place of genuine empathy rather than unconscious fear or judgment. We move, collectively, closer to a form of enlightenment, not by somehow eradicating darkness, but by making it conscious, both within ourselves and in our collective interactions. This is the quiet, profound power you wield when you undertake this personal journey. You're actually contributing to the healing and wholeness of humanity itself.
It brings us right back to that central idea. Purpose is internal. It's not found out there, but cultivated within, through this integration. Your shadow isn't a barrier to that purpose. It's a vital guide containing the very energy and insights needed to step fully into it.
Yeah, and your wounds, those areas of deep struggle and vulnerability, often linked to your shadow. Those are frequently the places where your deepest wisdom resides. Someone who has profoundly struggled with feelings of unworthiness, for instance, when they integrate that shadow aspect, might become an incredibly powerful advocate or healer, helping others recognize their own inherent value because they know that struggle intimately. The energy of frustration or injustice, when brought into consciousness and channeled, can fuel powerful movements for positive social change. The wound becomes the gift.
And this requires vulnerability, doesn't it? Acknowledging those shadow parts feels incredibly vulnerable, exposing them, even to yourself.
It absolutely does. But leaning into that vulnerability, acknowledging your fears, your insecurities, your perceived flaws, not just to yourself, but maybe eventually to trusted others, actually takes away their power to control you from the shadows. It's that counterintuitive truth again. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's a profound display of strength and self-acceptance.
And that strength, that authenticity born from vulnerability, allows for true connection.
Absolutely. When you stop expending all that energy maintaining a perfect facade, you allow yourself to be seen fully and authentically, warts and all. This creates the space for genuine connection with others, who are then often given implicit permission to be more real themselves. Authenticity is incredibly magnetic. It's foundational for meaningful relationships. It's not about presenting some perfect edited version of yourself. It's about cultivating a wholeness that comes from uniting all the parts, including those previously rejected shadow aspects.
Which loops right back to that core Jungian wisdom you quoted. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The real work is in the darkness, bringing it to light.
It is. The path to wholeness, to individualization, runs straight through the shadow. There's no detour.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, the revelation feels really powerful and clear. Your shadow, that hidden, often feared reservoir within you, it's not a source of shame to be buried deeper. It is, in fact, a profound gift. It holds crucial keys to your authenticity, your creative power, and your deepest sense of purpose. Engaging with it, bringing its contents into conscious awareness, has the power to fundamentally transform your inner landscape, and by extension, your contribution to the world around you.
Yeah, and we know this isn't easy work. It's certainly not instantaneous. It really is a lifelong journey of peeling back layers and integrating what you find. But the challenge, or maybe the invitation we offer you listening, is this. Look within, with courage and with compassion for yourself. Not just the parts of yourself you're proud of, the ones you're happy to display on the highlight reel, but gaze honestly into the areas you've kept hidden, the aspects that make you uncomfortable or ashamed.
And maybe ask yourself these core questions, the ones that can unlock immense insight. What is my shadow trying to teach me right now in this phase of my life? What energy, what potential, what suppressed truth is waiting there, wanting to be acknowledged and integrated? And crucially, maybe most importantly, what small, perhaps slightly uncomfortable but manageable step can I take today to begin or maybe continue this vital journey of integration? Just one step.
Remember, every single step you take on this path of making the unconscious conscious, brings you closer to becoming the full, complex, powerful person you are truly meant to be, a person of greater depth, authentic purpose, and ultimately profound wholeness.
So we invite you to take a moment, maybe after listening, just to reflect on what resonated most deeply for you today. What initial insight about your own shadow surfaced during this conversation? What feeling or memory or trigger came to mind? Your willingness to simply engage with these questions, to explore your own depths, is a powerful act. It not only transforms your life, but can subtly inspire those around you too. This isn't the end of the exploration, of course. It's simply the beginning of a new, perhaps more courageous chapter in embracing your whole self.
We wish you courage, wisdom, and peace on this essential journey inward.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been great exploring this. Until next time on Thought Provoked.
Take care.